Anyway, good evening, everyone, and I hope you won't find this too boring. I've endeavoured to try and keep it fairly light-hearted. It's really based on my own experiences with trail cameras. I wouldn't profess to be any sort of super expert on these things, but yeah, practical pitfalls in the field and successes. I've really just sort of wrapped those up in what I'm going to talk about tonight. So I think, rather than hang around and looking at me and chatting away here, I'll go into the PowerPoint. Right, hopefully you can all see the display there, and it says trail cameras, back of the drawer, or opening up a whole new world.
That's fine, Phil.
Okay. I'm forever getting asked. People, it's usually wives of men ring me up and say, I'm thinking of getting my husband a present for his birthday, and I thought a bat detector might be a really good idea. And it's funny, I've only ever once been asked by a man about getting a bat detector for his wife. In that case, she absolutely loved it and became quite a good ecologist. So it was opening a whole brave new world for her. But what usually happens with bat detectors is that it's a novelty for a couple of nights. Then it gets put in a drawer until the following summer when there's a barbecue on or something and a few bats fly over and the bat detector is hurriedly found and everybody realizes that the batteries are flat and they don't know what they're listening to anyway, and so it goes back in the drawer. And that's a real sad loss of resources, really. There must be hundreds of them sitting in drawers around the country. So I suppose the first point I want to make tonight is that unless you have a fairly clear idea of what you want to achieve with a trail camera, it's probably just going to land up at the back of the drawer again, or on the back of a cupboard. So I'm hoping that this will at least help inspire others to try and think of other things to actually get out and use their trail cameras and make good use of them. So it's important to be clear what you want to do with or achieve with your trail camera. If you're not just getting it for amusement, well, if you're just getting it for amusement, I should say, then you really don't need to spend a large amount of money. And I'll give you an example later on in the talk about just how cheaply you can get a trail camera for. But if the aim of, or your aim is to find out about the wildlife in your garden or your local community or whatever, then it is worth spending a bit more money. And if you really want to get seriously involved in trail cameras, then it's worth investing in a relatively expensive one. In Vice County 42, Breconshire, the first trail camera record I was ever presented with was in February 2013. And that was with a badger near Llanothor. So they've been out there for a while now, and thinking back to the video that was presented to me at the time, it was probably just as well it was a badger, because they're very obvious with their black and white faces. It couldn't be anything else. But some of the early cameras didn't have the quality of lenses to produce super images. But now there must be literally dozens of machines in use. I've got several out today. I'm sure others have, and so there must be dozens out there working probably tonight. And one of the things we want to sort of look at and perhaps take questions about later on is about how you can contribute, or camera users can contribute to the whole better understanding of our wildlife. So they're a valuable tool, but if you just want to take pictures of birds on the table, that's fine. No need to feel guilty about it, but you can do more. You can submit your images to the local record centre for verification, confirming what you think you have recorded, or on occasions finding out it isn't what you thought it was at all. You can start to give us a better understanding of the distribution of species, where even quite common animals are as valuable as rare ones, really. And don't be embarrassed by misidentifications. We all make them, and so sometimes I put something down as one species and find myself going back to it an hour later and thinking, no, it's not that, is it, Phil? It's something else entirely. So if you're really serious about getting into trail cameras and you can afford a reasonable budget, then I'd say go for a good quality camera, somewhere between 170 and 250 pounds. Less than that sort of sum of money, you're going to have to make compromises. And frankly, if you spend more than 250 pounds, you're probably not going to get that sort of quantum leap in performance that you'd like. And those sort of prices include VAT, but they don't include the batteries or an SD card. Get a camera with a fast trigger speed, and the best ones offer speeds of around 0.1 or 0.15 of a second to activate. That's really valuable because you get the animal sort of stepping into the picture rather than stepping out. Go for a no-glow camera, and that's one which it illuminates the animal without them being able to detect the light. Hopefully we'll show you a couple of videos later on which indicates that maybe they are detecting something about the camera, but it's not likely to be the light that the camera is giving off. When you put an SD card in your camera, get a good quality one. And again, don't scrimp on the batteries. Lithium are best, they are expensive, but if you're operating in sub-zero temperatures, which I did throughout the winter, I was really grateful the lithium batteries seemed to really work. There are dozens of trail camera manufacturers, and each offers at least several different specifications, so there's usually something to suit most pockets. Take your time to buy the one that's best for your needs, and importantly, for your budget. You know, you don't want to be taking out a second mortgage, and the way things are with inflation at the moment, you know, we all want to try and get away with the best quality for the minimum price. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're going to a wildlife equipment retailer, they nearly always have somebody on their teams with relevant expertise. But there's also a growing amount of expertise locally on these things. And, you know, I've got a sort of little personal network of people who use trail cameras, and we chat about what's working and what isn't sometimes. I've just given a few examples of suppliers and manufacturers, and there's Nature Spy, NHBS, Wildcare, Wildlife Services, and sort of popular cameras made by Browning, Bushnell, Little Acorn, and Spy Point. But again, there really are dozens of different manufacturers. I'm just going to have a little look at the cameras I use. I was using Bushnell cameras, but frankly, I went away from them because I kept opening them up and finding them full of water. So I went over to Brownings, which seemed to be able to cope with our local weather. And the one I really like the best is the Browning Spec Ops Elite HP4. Again, this has got a really fast trigger speed. It's a no-glow camera. It's a relatively high cost at about 190 without the batteries and card. But it gives you good quality videos, 22 megabytes. It's really easy to use, and I found them to be absolutely 100% reliable and not subject to leakage. The other ones I use are the Browning Patriot or Patriot. I'm not quite sure which fits. Depends, I suppose, which side of the Atlantic you are. Then fast trigger speed, 0.15, no glow, slightly higher price at £199.99 or £200. Excellent videos at 24 megabytes, relatively easy to use. But I've only ever bought 2 of these, and one has been totally brilliant and the other has had to go back and be replaced. And it has got a reputation for unreliability. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a good camera to go for. And the new kid on the block, as I've described it here, is the Browning Spec Ops Elite HP5. Now this has got a really fast trigger speed at 0.1 per second, no glow, and using Radiant 5 illumination technology. Now I have no idea what Radiant 5 illumination technology means, but I'm going to find out because I've just got one of these and it's currently out in the field being heavily trialed, so to speak. Again, a bit expensive at £200 without the batteries and SD card. But my initial impressions of it was that it was really quite good, with excellent videos, and it was easy to put it out in the field. And whilst looking on the internet this week, I noticed that if you go to Voucher, you can get yourself a trail camera for £19.99. Excuse the pun, I hope it doesn't result in an oucher, but I've really no idea how good this is. It might be quite good. Sometimes these bargain basement things can be, but whether it will last, well, that's anybody's guess. Suitable locations, well, certainly gardens. I frequently use cameras in my gardens just to see whether they're working properly and find out what's trotting through the garden. But most of my cameras I deploy in woodlands, and I would only ever deploy a camera in grassland when it's a sheltered location. So if you're behind a wall or behind a fairly thick hedge, and I put it in as an unsuitable location. If you put these up in open grassland, which I have over the years, you just get thousands of images of every time a blade of grass twitches. So that gets really boring going through all those videos then. I tend to put my cameras anywhere from sort of calf height to head height. And if I was prepared to go out with a ladder, you could put them higher. I don't know that the aspect is particularly crucial, but I have found with some of the cameras that if it's facing right into the sun, it does sort of wash out the image, and then you're struggling to sort of make out the fine detail. So I usually put them with a northerly or north-facing aspect. And as I've said there, trial and error with respect to what is in your picture and what you make of it if the field is empty is a particularly important thing, especially if the wind is, if the wind is blowing a branch across the camera and triggering it, or yeah, there's leaves and whatever, they will all trigger the camera, and then you get awful an awful boring time looking at the images. One of the things I've found is that bats often trigger the cameras, and they just, well, the majority of the time, just too fast to be captured by the camera, so it's triggering the camera. And I've had occasions where I've had a camera in a ride and it's gone off maybe 180 times during the night. You never see what's triggering it, but I'm fairly sure it's a bat. And then there's what I call just a little bit more. Now, if you're really wealthy, which really puts most of us out of the picture, you could use your trail camera in conjunction with a bat detector. There's a song meter mini bat detector, which is about £725. I haven't got one of these, but I'm familiar with song meter. They're generally very reliable. This one's particularly light. You can, program it from your mobile phone. It's very good on batteries. You'll get about 125 nights from a set of AA batteries. So putting one of these with your trail camera may give you the missing bits of the picture, so to speak, or alternatively, add to what you're actually viewing on the camera, because we've had images of bats going through the trail cameras foraging, and sometimes you can identify features like long-eared bats, and sometimes you're just left with a bit of a mystery as to what on earth it could be. I think that was really all I wanted to do with, those were the things that sort of went through my head when I was trying to put this together. So, as I said, there's so many cameras out there. It's like going to look for taps. I don't know if you've ever gone looking for taps, but there seem to be thousands of them. And, all I want is to pour some water out, please. So you just have to sort of look around and try and find the one that seems right for you. I have got some videos which I can show you. They're mostly of the cameras I've used and had great success with. Well, were there any questions before we move on to some videos?
I've got a very quick one, Phil. You mentioned this business of no glow, and I was lucky enough to get one of the cameras. It's a Browning, and I can't remember the model for the life of me, but it's under the initiative that was called Watching Nature Recover. I think it's probably finished now, but all the cameras were kind of deployed out to people lucky enough to get them. And I've got one, and I've noticed sometimes I'll get a fox or a badger or something, and they seem to get spooked by I thought it was infrared, but maybe there's a glow. How would I be able to tell?
Yeah, well,
and why would it be important? Or maybe
that's interesting. Yeah, when I show some of these videos, you'll see that the animals that I've recorded do take a really serious interest in the camera. They shouldn't be able to see any light coming from it, so the camera's obviously doing something else. That it could be that it's giving off some ultrasound trigger, but something seems to trigger their interest in the camera, which isn't necessarily the light source. When I was using Bushnell cameras, I didn't have the no glow options, and they were certainly certain animals were certainly very aware of the light. They used to react like, "Whoa, who put the light on?" So yeah, I think there's more to the story than just the source of light, but I don't think it does any harm to pay that little bit extra and have the no glow facility.
And the no glow means that there's no visible light. If we were to look at it, we wouldn't see anything. It would just be the infrared that's glowing on the back of the retinas of the
That's right.
animals, is it? Right.
Yeah. The amazing thing is that I've never actually walked past any of my cameras myself at night to find out what it does when I trigger them. I must try that. Funnily enough, I tend to be out looking at bats and not looking at trail cameras. But there you are. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a couple of comments. So like you, I started off with Bushnell. I had 2 Bushnell cameras, but after a couple of years they failed. I mean, to be fair, they were out 365 days of the year, but yeah, they both failed eventually, and I've moved to Bushnell now, and I'm very happy with the Bushnell cameras. Get a really good quality, and they're much faster trigger speed, although obviously the technology is coming on all the time. But the other thing I was going to say was about the cheap ones. So on the advice of somebody, I bought an Apeman, which was advised good for just taking pictures rather than videos. So I thought I'd give it a try. I think it was about 40 quid, and it worked really well. It does work really well, but I can't actually get the information off the micro SD card for some reason. I've tried it in a couple of different computers and tried lots of troubleshooting, and I just can't seem to get it to read the micro SD cards. So that's really frustrating, because it's like the camera works, but it's basically useless if I can't actually look at the card. So it's worth bearing that in mind. Yes,
yeah. Well, you know, one of the points I made was why I like the Brownings is they are really easy to use. I won't say they're idiot proof, because, you know, I'm a certified idiot and I've managed to screw it up on occasions. But most of it is straightforward. Yeah, I've had very few failures, I can honestly say, for my own stupid fault, but very well. Anything else at this point?
Okay. Yeah, it was just the general point. One of the things that I was keen, and it might be in Ben's list of sort of questions that I asked when I enrolled on the session, was that I get the odd mouse, the odd, you know, small mammal, let's put it that way, and I'd ideally like to be able to sort of add it with some confidence onto the BIS database, and I invariably end up sort of sending it to Sorcia and saying, what do you think this is? Is it a wood mouse or a yellow neck? I'd be very keen to know if there's any techniques to try and get a better, either a better image or a better likelihood of being able to say with a bit more certainty, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's X, Y, or Z in a small mammal.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Mice and voles and shrews, really. Both, in fact, many animals, you've got that first aspect of scale, you know, just how big is this thing I'm looking at? But with the mice and voles, you know, how do you tell a field vole from a bank vole? You know, you're having to do those things you would do in the field ordinarily when you're handling them or observing them, when you're looking at the length of the tail and other sort of features to sort of try and figure out, you know, is that a short tail or slightly longer? And yes, unless the mouse, you know, actually sort of sits in front of you and sits up and presents its chest for you to inspect to see whether it's got that yellow throat or just a spot. Yeah, we're all in the dark. I mean, I suppose the better quality image that you get, you know, you can spend a lot of money and get some really super quality videos from some of the more expensive cameras. But I doubt that the extra investment would be worth it. I think there will always be these cases where you feel somewhat frustrated by what you're seeing. So yeah, we're all in the same boat.
What about trying to attract them during daylight hours when you've got maybe a better quality image? Is that possible or not?
Yeah, I mean, mice tend to be active all the time anyway, and voles, because they're you know, all these small mammals are constantly needing to forage and feed. So, you know, there's an element that it's just luck that you happen to get an animal that comes into the picture. But yes, you know, I noticed I was looking at somebody else's camera this week, and they put out some fruit to sort of try and attract the animal that they were after, which wasn't a mice or voles, but yeah, you can bait, I suppose, the area in front and just hope that you get a little bit more information. Yeah.
If you're really keen, Bob, you might want to look into making a mostella, which is it's something that some people have developed as a way of trying to monitor small mammals and mustelids. And it's basically you put the camera in a box and then the animals come in, and it's proven quite good. It's not something I've tried myself, but it might be worth it if you're really keen, because it's getting that angle and as you say, it's still not going to give you the results that you're looking for every time. It's just not possible, but it might improve chances a bit.
And is that something that you can get a design off the internet to sort of put a box together?
I'll put a link in the chat to for paper on it, which will get you started.
Yes. Was it British Wildlife or the Mammal Society journal? I can't remember. It was.
Yeah, Mammal Research it was, yeah.
That was it. Yeah. Yeah. And one of my trainees, she's tried it. She didn't have a great deal of success. But yeah, there is a design, and it, I mean, the authors of the paper were you know, saying it worked for them.
Great, thanks for that.
Is there a simple way of identifying bank voles and field voles? Because we've got dozens of them, little voles, and there's loads of holes just outside the front of the house, and they're in and out all the time. How can I tell them?
Okay. Well, the fact you've got holes for a start tends to point to bank vole.
Okay.
I mean, you know, field voles do go into holes, and there's usually runs and above ground sort of grass nests. But the bank vole has a longer tail than the field vole. Historically, we used to know field voles as short-tailed field mice.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, unless you've got one each in the hand to compare the length of the tail, but you know, you really are looking at a very short tail with a field vole. It's obviously a tail. It's not like a little bob or a thing like a rabbit, you know. But yeah, the longer the tail, it's likely to be a bank vole, and holes suggest bank vole presence as well.
Yeah,
they also climb things better than field voles.
Okay.
So if you're finding they're getting up into something, it could well be bank voles.
They seem to be just, we've got some sort of dry stone walls around us, and then fairly rough grass, and you can see all the little runs through the grass where they've been going through, and then they disappear down holes. Yeah,
you could have both, of course. It's entirely possible, and probably mice as well, helping to keep the runs open. So you know,
set the camera trap up and try and get some better pictures.
Yeah, small mammals, you know, are always a bit of a nightmare. You know, when there's so many animals that are obvious, like foxes and badgers, and but then when you start getting into these tiny little ones, then you got your work cut out. And it's an experience thing, really. If you do some live trapping, and you know, buy yourself some live traps or whatever, catch a few animals, then you'll get to see, yes, this has this sort of feature, and obviously fits with any guidance book you're using, or one of the field guides. Field Study Council do some very good small mammal guides. Yeah, it's getting that hands-on experience to a degree, but don't be afraid to send your video in to somebody. You know, I'm always getting videos coming in. It's great. It's really thrilling. Some people get some really, really exciting things on their videos. And, you know, it's never boring for me to have a look at it and give an opinion. I might come back and say, well, I haven't the faintest idea what it is, because that happens. But most of the time, you know, there are little clues that give the animal away.
No, when we set the camera trap up near the boundary of the property, overnight we were getting loads of, I don't know, a small mouse-like thing that seemed to almost hop on its back legs rather than scuttle along, and it was in and out of the bottom of an oak tree. So loads of pictures of that.
Yellow-necked mice and wood mice do have a sort of bouncing gait, I suppose you might describe it as. They can both jump quite high. Yellowneck in particular, I've seen them literally leap off the ground and go over my shoulder. So yeah, leaping is not a problem, and therefore their rear legs are built to do that sort of thing. So the bouncing gait again suggests it could well be one of those apodemus, what we call apodemus species, the yellowneck or the wood mouse.
Okay, thank you. I'm
aware there's some chats. There are some questions in the chat.
There's one from Barbara about the height for hedgehogs and badgers. I guess the more commoner species you like to capture.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, as I said, I tend, it depends what I'm going after. And this is why here they call them, you know, camera traps and things like you are actually going out there to hunt these things down and trap them. But there is a bit of an analogy there. If you're looking for the things close to the ground, the better to put the camera closer to the ground, as I say, about mid-calf height. But obviously, the nearer you are to the ground, there's more movement of grasses and things like that. The wind action can play more of an influence, and you may get more images than you're actually of nothing, rather than the animal you're after. I tend to put mine about mid-thigh, and that works pretty well. But again, like the bats, I think that sometimes the small mammals do scurry underneath. They're triggering the camera, but they're not in the area, or the area that the camera just is actually capturing the image of. So again, perhaps putting up higher, you're going to miss those small ones. You can, of course, put the camera in at an angle, so it's actually, you know, focusing on the ground. That can help too. But yeah, I think it's, as I said, it's trial and error. Don't be afraid to put it out for a while. Another thing I would say, and I hadn't really included in the talk, is that I don't really expect very much from my camera in the first week. So I tend to put them out for about 4 weeks as a minimum. I always think in the first week, it's like, well, the smell of you is around them very often. And that puts some animals off. And it's often in the second or third week that things start to come closer and be more obvious, because there's no human scent around to discourage them, really. Hope that helps. I mean. Well, if there's no more immediate questions, let's do a couple of videos perhaps, and it's just a random selection. But yeah, scream when you've had enough, as they say. You can see it, okay? But hopefully then you can all see this. I'll go back and say what I was saying earlier on. This is a brown hare in a coniferous forest, and the camera's slightly into the sun. And hopefully now you can see this. As you see, it's gone into where it's brighter sunlight, and the image washes out a little bit. So how, you know, the aspect or the way your camera is facing. For me, I've always found the ones that face north a little bit better. I'm just going to try going on to the next video. And this is a badger night image. This is a no-glow camera. Again, you can see something triggered the badger's interest. It's sniffing around. This was a couple of nights after the camera had been put up. And here's a roe deer. Now, again, something has triggered its interest. This was about 3 weeks after the camera had been put up. But it was like there was some noise or something. And if I go back a little on this, its ears are very definitely sort of pointing in the direction of the camera. You know, even though it's turned away from the camera, still sort of listening backwards in the direction of the camera.
How do you know that one's a roe deer, Phil?
Again, I'll just pause it and put it into reverse. But if you can look at the rump of the animal, that's the tail. it's a very, very tiny tail, and there's this white patch. If it had been a fallow deer, you'd expect a very obvious tail to be visible, and a white rump with a black tail and black edges to the rump. I noticed somebody put a roe deer image on YouTube this week, and it was in fact a fallow deer. So again, it's another reason for sharing your video, just to make sure it is what you think it is. It's a roe deer again. I'm afraid I got a few of these, but they are just delightful. But again, you can see it's twitching its ears towards the camera, suggesting there's some sound. This camera's north facing, and it is at about thigh height. So that's the sort of quality of image you can get. And this is the HP4 cameras. One of the HP4s are very, very good and very reasonable. Obviously decided in this case, it wasn't so sure this was a safe place to be. That's a pretty good 20-second long film there.
Could I just ask with that, Phil, is that a full-grown roe deer?
Yeah, it's actually two males in this particular area. They're pretty much close to being full grown. Yeah, I wouldn't like to actually say. I didn't ask their age, as they say. Isn't right.
It's interesting how the nighttime roe deer came right up to the camera, whereas the daytime it was more.
Yeah. This was a camera that was placed very low to the ground. I'll just take the image back a bit because, as you can see, there's a polecat going through this. So, you know, it couldn't be any lower. That's as low as we put the camera. It's about 6 inches off the ground. Well, this is the same sort of glade that the deer was in, but just to show that I do actually film other things than deer. Lovely example of a red fox here, quietly walking through, and the fox apparently is not aware of the camera at all, and so I don't know. I think if it is sound, maybe it's a fox with very poor hearing, or yeah, maybe the deer is just a bit more sensitive with its hearing. Well, we've got a couple of red deer, same glade. I always think these animals look almost prehistoric. They're substantially larger than the roe. We're talking about the same height as a human being, really. And here's a bat. Now, because I can actually see the underside of this bat, I'll take the image back a little while now. Comes back through the screen, through the picture, I think, here. Yeah. Right. If I take you back to this initial fly past, you can see there that the underside of the bat is quite pale, quite light colouring. And I think this is one of the myoted bats. But if I'd had a song meter there, you know, with the same timing on it, I would have had some confirmation of that. So whilst I've attributed it to being a myoted bat, it could be something else. Bats are really complicated though. The roe again. This is the, let's say there's two in this area. This one's slightly less mature than the other. Just giving the antlers a rub there. But I get a real thrill out of, you know, watching these videos. You know, it's sort of not David Attenborough and BBC type quality. It is nonetheless thrilling to be able to see these creatures in the wild and, you know that they're in my environment, so to speak. Here's the red deer again. Very obviously different rump on these animals. Can't really mistake them for anything else. They're so large. This one's just posing to show you the full rear end of the animal. Here's an otter. Again, this one was placed, this camera was placed pretty low. Just having a little sprint over there. But like many people, I get cats. Occasionally in the garden, I get other people's chickens, because I don't keep chickens myself, but they seem to be in my garden. And this is a fallow deer, or is it? We've got a tail. Or is that a tail? Well, it is actually a roe deer, but it's got a tuft of fur. It's sort of sticking out between its legs, which can confuse the rearing. But when I was using Bushnells, this rear end shot was very often what you would get because the trigger speed was slow, and you just get the rear of the animal. And based on that shot there, you might just think, oh, it's a fallow deer, but it isn't. It's a roe. There's the otter just trotting through again. I think that's actually the last of the images I've got to show you. I need now to pause the share and yeah, it's been fun just putting them out, seeing what I get. I've been fortunate that I had the money to be able to, you know, put several cameras out and have the resources to do that. But you know, I was getting just as much joy with one camera, and it was always really fascinating to see what was going past. And I've had some, you know, you do get people going past occasionally. Sometimes they see the camera and they sometimes wave. Now, one of the things I identified about myself very early in having a trail camera was what I call trail camera paranoia. Will it be there next time I go back? Now, I know people have had, you know, cameras taken. You probably can get an insurance for it. I haven't bothered. I've never lost one. But yeah, it's sort of in the back of your mind. Oh, has somebody gifted themselves with my camera? But yeah, it's one of those things I was talking to a young guy the other day and saying, well, I can't leave them out for it more than a couple of nights. I get worried about, will it still be there? And I think you just got to, you know, bite something and risk it. But often the rewards are there because, you know, I think most people, and I've had people walk right past cameras and not notice them. And it is quite funny where people do get to. It's not just me that's going there. But yeah, it's something you just have to deal with, I suppose.
We've got a question here from Bob in the chat. And he's asking about the deer that we get here in Powys. I know that we're getting more and more deer. Now, is that more deer coming in or is it more records being received? But what species have been seen?
Well, Tammy's probably thinking exactly what I'm thinking. You know, this could be recorder effort or it could be a genuine increase. Both is probably true. In Brecknock, the most commonly recorded is certainly roe, and then muntjac is quite commonly recorded. Yeah. I nearly got knocked off my bike recently by a muntjac that leapt out. I don't know who avoided who, but we didn't crash. Red deer, quite a few records now in Brecknock. from two sort of basic sources, but they do turn up in all sorts of places. And I startled one in a wood and I nearly had heart failure because they really are big, being charged off through the woods. Fallow deer, well, they're here, but not as many, I think, as the others. There are certain seemingly hot spots for them where I find them. But that's it, really. It's just those four. If anything else turns up, we're all going to be thinking, oh no, another one to get to grips with. But yeah, I think roe, though, are pretty common now. And I'm getting, in my Vice County area, records from a wide range of places, and it seems like every time I put out a trail camera, I will get a roe deer. Sometimes I get something else, but mostly it's roe.
That's interesting. I would say from my perspective, fallow seem to be more common around here, but that's probably a bit of a Welshpool bias. There's certainly plenty around Welshpool, Middletown Hill. They're very numerous, and
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think we are getting more deer sightings, but I think deer are spreading as well. It wasn't that long ago that a monk track record I would have looked at with some surprise. I had a record many years ago in Havering Forest, and it was a very reliable recorder, so I accepted it. But it was the most westerly record that had ever been found in Montgomeryshire, and I'm getting more monk track records recently across the Vice County. So I think there's a bit of both going on for sure.
Yes, yes. I mean, the first records around here were quite early, 64. And I know they've had them over in Pembrokeshire, so maybe just in the south they went west as fast as they could. I mean, the reason you may have more fallow is that you've got more sort of what I would call parkland. Brecon didn't have many big country houses and parks, and so fallow were often introduced to, you know, by wealthy landowners to their parkland, and whether that's a facet in Vice County 47, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got Powys Castle and the grounds there, but they've got red and fallow, but interestingly the red don't seem to be all over the place, but the fallow are.
Yeah, so again, you're getting sort of hot spots maybe for them. Perhaps they don't travel well.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Radnorshire because Saoirse, who's the recorder in Radnorshire for Mammals, isn't able to join us tonight. But Bob, do you hear any deer records in Radnorshire where you are, or see?
Well, it's a very current question, really, because just a week ago I was looking out at my upstairs window at a water leak happened to be in one of my fields from a Welsh water pipe. And I saw in a separate field something running across, got the binoculars on it, and I managed to get a couple of photos which Saoirse confirmed were a roe deer. And I've never seen a roe deer in this area. I live in Crossgates, just north of Landrindo. But other people tell me they're around and, you know, up in the Ellen Valley and regularly seen. So that's quite interesting. Other species I can't say, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think they are definitely moving, probably west from the Forest of Dean and across the English border. So yeah, I think they are being recorded more because there are more of them, and there probably are more people aware now and actually making records, which is good. So gives us an idea of their spread.
Yes, if I could just interject for a moment, I was thinking that I'm only ever seeing adult roe. I'm never seeing any young, you know, babies or anything like that. So I don't know. It's difficult to judge whether they're breeding in the area or not.
Well, what about within the Brecon beacons? What's recorded in the beacons where we are? So I've never seen a deer in the farmland around here.
Okay.
We're just near Brecon itself.
Yeah, they're all the way from basically the west boundary at Aspreswell, all the way down to beyond Brecon. So as far as Breconshire element of the national park is concerned, the mid and north areas of the park to the east and west, they're widespread, I'd say now. I don't get any records from down in sort of Neath Valley area, or on the Brecon Beacons itself. But then I don't get many records from those areas anyway.
Right.
I just don't think the recorder effort is there to notice these things. I mean, I might actually start having a little look down there, because one of my focuses of late has been to look at the bits that nobody goes and records in. So it may be that they're there, just nobody there to see them.
Okay, thanks. No, we'll have to have a look ourselves.
Yeah, it could be an incentive to put your camera in some of these places where. But I know, Phil, when you go out putting your cameras out, you often spot other people's, or sometimes spot other people's cameras who are doing the same thing as you.
Yeah, you almost developed an instinct for camera presence, and I hope I've got quite adept at actually sort of never actually appearing in the image, because I've sort of snuck around the back and out of view. Yeah, I always went through life sort of not wishing to be noticed, if possible. a bit like the deer. Did we have any other questions?
Bob was wondering if red deer are sort of felt to be a problem being in the national park area, Brecon Beacons National Park.
Interesting. I haven't heard anybody voice the opinion that they're a problem. I mean, they may, just haven't spoken to me about it. I mean, they should be here, but they're pretty inconspicuous. I mean, I've sort of spotted them south of Bilth, over at Talgath way, but mostly it's the sort of upper Towie Valley around Cray and west of there to the source of the Usk sort of thing. The video I showed you was just about 4 kilometers south of Aspreswell. And that seems to be the main stronghold, but that's Usk Valley, but they have crept out into the Wye Valley of late. So I think, again, they're quietly spreading.
And Tammy says that they're probably not numerous enough to cause problems. And I think if people see deer, they don't cause the same concern as maybe if it was a wild boar that are also kind of heading west from Forest of Dean area causes when you see one of those. Although, of course, deer do eat trees, which is a concern for forestry. So I guess, yeah, their numbers just aren't numerous enough. Maybe they're causing localized problems in places, but yeah, they don't result in that ire of feeling for some people as, say, a wild boar would do.
No, it's interesting how when I first started getting into deer, I chatted to one of the old Forestry Commission sort of shooters, the guys that went out to control the deer. And he was an excellent source of records for where deer had been seen. But also he was saying, well, we don't shoot them all because we want jobs for the future. So undoubtedly some were left in the hope that they would continue to give work for future years.
Now, I know you do get quite a few mammal records, Phil, that are dead animals, which is, it's a good source of information as to where they are. But I've never seen one for a deer, a dead deer, but you've probably had one or two in the past. But
We had one last year found in the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal.
oh wow.
Almost certainly because the road runs right next to the canal in places. It was hit by a car and just tumbled into the canal where it either was already dead or drowned, sort of thing. But yeah, they turn up. My brother had the misfortune to run into one in Carmarthenshire one night, which provided Neil Matthews with a record. He was perfectly all right, apparently, but the car wasn't too good. But my brother wasn't skillful enough to recognise what the species was, but it was big, he said.
Okay, yeah, I guess they're not seen as a traffic hazard at the moment, but as Bob says, maybe they might become one if they get more numerous.
Yeah, I think, I know of at least in the last 18 months, at least 3 people who've collided with a deer on their bike. One of the people was recently just east into Herefordshire near Hay on Wye, ran into a red deer and completely threw her off the bike. She has had to have facial reconstruction surgery, unfortunately, poor girl. They are a big animal to hit. So, I mean, yeah, maybe we're gonna, have more experiences like that, where people actually physically hit them, and then the word will get about, and inevitably the press get hold of it, and we'll all be asked to assess, well, is this really a problem?
Okay,
as if they're having parties and not really.
It's a little bit more common than I thought, and Tammy's got a story there in the chat as well about one landing on the bonnet of a car. I wonder if the increase in mountain biking in woody areas with forest tracks is increasing bike collisions. So the ones you know about, Phil, are they kind of road cyclists or?
Yeah, the ones I've heard of have all been on the roads, but I mountain bike through along forest tracks. I do wear a full face helmet, quite frankly, because I know there's a risk I'm going to encounter a deer. And as I said, my experience with the muntjac, it was probably faster than I was, faster at reacting, that is. I thought it was going along quite quickly at the time, but it was quicker than me. But yeah, there's. I think it's a probability that people will encounter them. I hope that we will hear, positive stories. I mean, we did have a report and some film a few years ago of somebody on a mountain bike encountering a wild boar. That doesn't seem to have been a conflict, more surprising for both parties, really. That had been one of these GoPro cameras on his bicycle that had brought that evidence in. Yeah, all of these sources of videos and still images that are produced by cameras that people either have on their bikes or helmets or trail cameras. It's really opening a whole new aspect to these animals. Gosh, I wish we'd had them 40 years ago. What wouldn't I have done?
Okay, thanks for that. Has anyone got any more comments or questions? I was thinking it might be a good time for me to do my short talk, and there are a few questions and discussion points on there from people who couldn't make it tonight that we can maybe have a look at as well. Is that okay with you, Phil? You're happy to hand over?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for that, Phil. It's great to see the videos. I have seen some of those before, and the comment from Barbara who said that she enjoyed watching them as well. So, okay, I'll just I forgot to do this earlier. Just introduce Tammy, who's the mammal recorder in Montgomeryshire, and I mentioned Saoirse Lewis as well, who's the mammal recorder in Radnorshire, who's not able to be with us tonight, and of course we've got Phil, who is the mammal recorder for Breconshire. So it's great that we've got a mammal recorder in each of the 3 main virus counties in our area. And I'll mention them again in a little bit. So I'll just show my screen. Okay, yeah, so you know what the talk's all about because you've heard most of it already. So this is kind of an adaptation of a talk on wildlife recording in general that we do. And on the photographs there, you've kind of got the 4 stages of making a wildlife record. So you've captured an image, in this case, it's obviously a hedgehog. You've looked in books on the internet, wherever, and worked out what it is. Then you've made a record, and this is actually Tammy using the app at an event we did a few years ago to record the wildlife, wasn't the hedgehog, and then we can make that information available. In this example, it's dots on maps to show where records of a certain species has been made. So really useful information. And if you weren't aware of this, we're the Biodiversity Information Service for Powys and Brecon Beacons National Park area. You can see the area we cover in mid Wales on the map there, and we collate all the wildlife records and other information such as Wildlife Trust, nature reserves, triple SIs, and we kind of put all that information together and make it available to people who will make use of it for planning, research, and making management decisions, that kind of thing. And we also support wildlife recorders such as yourselves and our experts who they'd never like to be called experts, but our kind of vice counter recorders, who we've got 2 of here tonight. And Bob, who's also with us, is actually a dragonfly recorder for Breconshire. So we've actually got 3 of our vice counter recorders. And we promote wildlife recording, which is kind of what I'm trying to get all you guys to do from your trail cameras, and try and get more mammal records into our system, because they are slightly under recorded, and they're slightly elusive as well, a lot of them being nocturnal, of course. And we're one of 4 of these record centres, local environmental record centres, that cover the whole of Wales, and we all work collaboratively together, and all the records that we all gain from people such as yourselves across Wales are all put together onto one big database that we share the information of. So it's great that we're all working together. There's a leaflet available. You can get that from our website. It just sort of summarises what we do as a local environmental record centre. So Phil's been showing some really nice images. We didn't see a pine marten, but here are some pine marten records. And this just goes to show that recording has been going on for a long time, even though cameras weren't available 40 years ago, as Phil said. But you can see here, pine martens are in the national park area. These are figures from the event that I did recently. And you can see that that continuation is useful as well. So the highlighted ones show a record at Talabont in 1950. And then we didn't know if pine martens were in that area until 60 years later, when another record turned up in 2008. So that just shows the importance of the continuation of recording. And you'll see on the right there the verification level, and that's where people like Phil and Tammy and Bob for dragonflies come in. If they can be certain that what you have recorded is what you've said it is, by using a photo is a great way of doing it nowadays with the technology. They can give it a higher verification level, in this case 3, which means it's considered correct, because these records have all been verified as definite pine marten sightings. So the more information, and the photo is a great way of doing that, you can provide with the record, the better the quality of that record, if you like, can become. So photos are a great way of doing that. And we all 4 of us in Wales, the local environmental record centres, collate all our wildlife data onto a website called Aderin, which is kind of a wildlife recording database. And there's a couple of tools on there that you can use to see what's living in your area, not just mammals. Although I will say that some mammals, such as, I was going to say badger, but I'm not sure they're classed as a protected species now. I need to check on that, but some sensitive species, not protected, sensitive species don't actually show on that what's in my area tool as a species list for each 1 kilometre square in Wales. So you might think that, yes, there's definitely certain species here, maybe pine martens are on there, but we don't actually give that out as public information for some of them. So talking about pine martens, here's Powys, and these are all the pine marten records that we hold for Powys and Brecon Beacons National Park area. This is records from all time, and if we look at just the last 10 years, you can see there's quite a lot less records of pine marten. So some of the ones on the left will be quite old sightings from maybe more than 50, 60 years ago, maybe when they were more commonly seen and a lot more of them. And now they're kind of just starting to appear in the Brecon Beacons a little bit more, and also across Powys as well. So just goes to show that continued recording is important and gives us an idea of where those different species are. I also did one of these for fox, but you couldn't really see Powys because we do get a lot more fox records than pine marten, so I opted for one with a little bit less distribution. So you can see obviously the last 10 years a lot less records than overall, but pine marten are definitely increasing in numbers, and we're picking up more regular records now. So you never know, you might be lucky to get one on your camera. Just the definition of biological recording, because a lot of people don't really know what it is or what it's for, etc. Basically, it's science. A lot of times it's called citizen science, where we get the public to identify and record species. Basically, it's a scientific study of the distribution of living organisms. So it's where they are they there, how many, and that kind of thing. And as we've seen over time, we can see how that changes. So that's kind of simple-ish and easy to understand definition of biological recording. And all that is made up of individual biological records. And you'll hear me talk about the what, where, who, and when. And that's the information that we need to make a biological record. And I suppose to put those two together, biological recording is the process of making those biological records. So if you record the hedgehog that you captured on your trail camera, then that's a biological record, and it's part of the whole science of biological recording. So all really, really useful information. A few reasons there why you should record in terms of, I suppose, emotional and personal satisfaction. It is fun and interesting, and as we've seen with the COVID lockdown, it is increasing people's awareness of nature and connecting them with it. And if you've got any more suggestions to add to this, why you record wildlife or what you get out of it, then do let me know, because I have increased this list from asking that at several talks. And one that came out recently was the mental health benefit. It's been shown that connection with nature and feeling involved in something. So if you do become a wildlife recorder, you're kind of part of that wildlife recording community, and it can make you feel sort of better about yourself and what you're doing and helping society and conservation, of course. And in the yellow there, anyone can be a recorder. You don't need to be an expert such as Phil, Tammy, Bob with the dragonflies, anyone, as long as you can record what you're seeing, then you can be a wildlife recorder. And here's a bank vole, I think. Phil will tell me if it's not, but it was recorded as bank vole, and it got into a seed bin. So you don't always need a trail camera to capture mammals. This one was kind of trapped in the seed bin and was snapped on a regular camera. And those wildlife records, such as this hedgehog, which we'll see again in a bit, are really, really useful. And another reason why we should make wildlife records, we've seen the emotional reasons. This is how those records are used. So if we know what lives where, it can be protected. And over time and biological recording, we can look at population change and how distribution is changing. And that gives us evidence for conservation action and putting conservation measures in place. Lots of planning decisions make use of wildlife data. And of course, now we've got climate change and quite a lot of land use change in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And we can track the changes in species and their numbers and distribution over time as well, and relate it to change there as well. So really, really, really useful information. And here's a badger. That's some very helpful badger. And yeah, just a few sort of places where you can get help. You've met two of our mammal recorders tonight, and they're all very happy to receive queries and emails. And I didn't put their individual email addresses up here because I didn't get a chance to ask them if that was okay, but I'm sure they'll be happy with that. And if you did want to contact them, you can either email me, ben@bis.org.uk, and I can put you in touch, or you can find a link to all our mammal recording experts and other vice counter recorders, as we call them, on our website on the Find an Expert section, or it might be called Contact an Expert now. And then there'll be an email link there as well, so you can get in touch and share your videos, hopefully, and get some ID help as well. There's loads of social media groups out there, especially on Facebook. We'll show some of those in a minute. And I'll also talk about a website that we kind of joined, called Mammal Web. We joined with the previous camera trapping project, the Watching Nature Recover. It wasn't very widely used, but that's another way where you can actually upload all your images and captures and videos, and other people will actually make identifications for you. So if you've got hundreds of blades of grass twitching in the wind and you haven't got the time to go through them, you can put them all up onto Mammal Web, and some poor soul will look through them and say nothing, nothing, and then we can actually download the records of where they have made suggestions and seen something. So that's another way to make records out of your sightings, your captures. And I mentioned that we weren't going to talk that much about cameras tonight. We did cover them a little bit, which was really, really useful. But there's a couple of previous videos, you might have seen them, but they are available if you want to refresh yourselves or watch them for the first time on our YouTube channel. If you just search for Biodiversity Information Service on YouTube, and you'll come across the playlist with these two videos in there, and also one on the Browning camera that was given out to lots of people as well, an open the box video, so you can get the basics of opening it up and setting it up. So a couple of groups to promote. So we've got a new Powys and Brecon Beacons wildlife recording group on Facebook now. Every time I look, it's got more members, so it's steadily growing, and that's a kind of sharing and helping service, if you like, on Facebook. You've got to be on Facebook, unfortunately, but it's a good reason to join if you're not signed up already. And people can post their photos and images and get help with identification and how to record them. So it's getting more popular, and I'd encourage you to join if you are on Facebook. And just to pick out a more regional one, there's one for Radnorshire on the birds and wildlife. So got a few more members than our general one, but yeah, they're all good, helpful people involved in those groups, so well worth joining if you can. And then on the right there, on Twitter, not as useful for getting identifications, I don't find, but I just search for mammals, and of course you've got the Mammal Society, and also there's the Small Mammals UK. So if you're on Twitter, you might post a picture of something you've captured and use those handles, as they're called, at Small Mammals UK, and then that will get seen by people involved or liking that that group there. So well, yeah, good help available online now through these social media sites. And normally I promote the Look Wales app, which I'm just going to do very, very quickly as a way to record your sightings. I guess with mammals, it's a useful way to record things like molehills, so you don't really need a trail camera for that. That is a valid record of a mole, so that's fine. And also scats as well. And this, I think, is a pine marten, although Phil might disagree or say it's not conclusive, but fox is often a good one to record from the scats that they leave behind. So those kind of mammal signs are also really, really valid for making records with as well. So I encourage you to use that. It maybe isn't so easy to do camera trap footage photos on your phone, because obviously they're on an SD card and you've got to then transfer them to your phone, but it is possible. So I always suggest that using the online recording sites is preferable for putting your kind of images up on a record, which with the verification process is really, really useful information. And there we go, the who, what, where and when, the 4 things that we need to know to make a valid wildlife record. So just on using online sites, here's your wildlife camera, and you've got some captures on there, and they're sat on your SD card. So you've got to get the images or videos from that SD card onto your computer. Older computers tend to have a little slot where you can stick it straight in, which is great. The modern ones tend to have less and less kind of features like that. So you can buy an external SD card reader or card reader with various size slots with different cards that are available. I've got one of those, and you just plug it into your USB and then plug your SD card in, or whichever card you use, and you can copy or cut and paste the videos and images from your SD card onto your computer, maybe create a file, a folder that's got all your mammal captures in, so you know where they are. And then I'd use the online recording sites just because it's easier to put the photos on from your computer. We've got iRecord, which is kind of a national one. A lot more people probably aware of that one. And also BizWired, which is our own one here in Powys and Brecon Beacons National Park area for sightings in the Biz area, if you like. So use either. They're very, very much the same method, and we'll have a quick look at how to do that shortly. The cameras are great because as long as you've set the date and time correctly, you've got a record of the date that your capture was seen, and that forms the basis of the when for your record. It's got the date on there, which of course, being at night, could be before midnight or after midnight. So that's really interesting information to see actually when you're capturing things. Is it late at night or early in the morning? And then you can use the more accurate date as well. And probably easier to add a photo. If you've set your camera trap to take photos rather than video, it's easier to add a photo because it's already a photo, and you can only add photos to the apps and online recording sites. But it is possible to snip or screenshot from a video. A little bit more tricky. And here's the snipping tool that I use. Find it really, really useful, and I'll show a little video on how to do that. It was one of the questions that we were asked to cover. But in the past as well, not using trail cameras, I have actually used the app on my smartphone and taken a photo of a photo that I'd taken on another device to show what I'd seen. And that's perfectly okay as well, as long as the quality is fine. Probably a little bit more tricky to do it from a paused video because there's usually quite a lot of blur in there anyway. And underneath the camera trap there, you'll see the two online recording sites that I've mentioned, BizWired and iRecord, but if you Google those, you'll find them. So I made a little video on using the snipping tool. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I use it all the time because I think it's brilliant. Some people use Screenshot, but I think the snipping tool is better. So let's have a little look on how to do it.
Here's a video that's been captured on a camera trap. You can have a little look at it. I think you'd all agree it's a hedgehog. So how do you add that hedgehog to the record? Well, this tool here, the snipping tool, is the way to do it. And this is the one I snipped previously. And go to the snipping tool, and it should be on your computer already. And in the mode section, you want the rectangular snip. Might be on freeform when you first use it. So select the rectangular snip and then new, and that will allow you to draw a rectangle around the image that you want to snip. So this is a tricky bit, is trying to get the hedgehog where you want it. Now the best picture I can see is right at the start. So I'm going to take it all the way back using the time bar there, press play and then pause it almost straight away. There we go, got him looking at us now. So that's the image I want to capture using the snipping tool. So I'm going to open the snipping tool, go to new, and it'll disappear when you first click, and just draw a rectangle around the hedgehog, and then go, so that's in the snipping tool now, go file, save as, and then I'm just going to save it onto my desktop, and it just says capture, so I could put hedgehog, maybe the date, which we can see was 09/01/2020, and then save it. So that's now saved onto your computer on the desktop. So when you go to your desktop, you'll see it. And then you can add it to iRecord or BizWired when you're making wildlife records online.
And then I made another video just to show you how to add it to a online record. So I'll just quickly play that.
Here's the iRecord website homepage, which you'll come to when you first log in. You need to create an account, and it's a similar experience if you're using the BizWired online recording site, which is for records in Powys and Brecon Beacons National Park. So use either. The process is the same. These are the two most important buttons. So to make a wildlife record, you can go record and enter a casual record for a single record, or if you've captured a fox, a badger and a hedgehog, for example, on your camera on one night, you can enter those as a list. So record, enter casual record, for a single record. We need to know the date, so I'm going to use the example of the hedgehog that we had a capture from way back when in 2020. And if I remember rightly, it was January 2020, and I think the day was the 9th. This is a new way of using this system, so a little bit harder to put in records from the past, but it is possible. So if you've got images from years ago, you can add them. So there's a date. That's one of the fields we definitely need, and you'll see the red star there. It knows my name because I've got an account and I am logged in. There's the red star. I need to add the species name, which we know is hedgehog, and you'll see as I type, it'll come up with some suggestions. Pick the one that is correct, in this case hedgehog. There's the scientific name and it's a mammal, so yeah, that's the right one. You need to select it, it won't recognize just the typed name. These are all extra fields that you can fill in if you like, how many you've seen, whether it's an adult or not. And if any expert, such as Phil, identified it for you, you can add their name in there. Here's the section to add a photo. So you can either open the place where your photo is. In this case, it's on my desktop. And I can drag it in there, or I can click Add Photo and go to where it is. It's on my desktop, and there it is. Double click. And it will add it to the photos area. You can add a caption if you like. Maybe you put on camera or something like that. Then you need to add the location. You can see the red star there, and we actually need two bits of information. So we need a place name and also a spatial reference, which is usually a grid reference. There are other spatial references such as latitude, longitude, but grid reference is better. If you know what it is, then you can write that in there. You can use the map to find out the location grid reference, or you can search for a place on the map. So I'm going to search for Brecon. Brecon in Powys, that's the one. And then I can use the plus or click on the map, and you can, you need to use a plus minus scrolling out. So you can give quite a wide area if you like. This is a 100 by 100 meter square, or if you want to pinpoint where you've actually seen it, so maybe in your garden, you can click on the square, just using a random one here, where you've seen it. You can possibly go in another level and be really, really accurate with a 10 by 10 meter square, but this is fine. This is a 100 by 100 meter square, which is a 6-figure grid reference, which you can see over there on the left. So that's got the location. I can add the habitat it was in and the comment if I like. You don't need to do that. And then once we've got all the starred details in, the when, who, what, and where, we can submit that record. You don't need to add a photo, but it is really, really useful. And because this is a mammal record in Breconshire, when I submit it, which it's gone to iRecord now, Phil will see that on iRecord, and he'll be able to see the photo and say, yeah, that's definitely a hedgehog, and give it a big tick, and that will become a verified record, which means it's more valuable than one that isn't verified, which still goes onto the system and can be mapped, etc. But that's just classed as unassessed. So if you can add more information, such as a photo, to enable it to be verified, that's great. And that record will appear in Explore My Records, and you'll be able to see that appear in maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and that's the place to go to see what records you have recorded, and also to do any edits and deleted if you want to delete a record as well. So the online sites are the place to record and edit your records. So hope that was helpful, and happy recording.
Now, here's the mammalweb.org website that we did use for the original project. That's the project. So if you go to that website, you'll see a tab projects, and then you search for this one in Mid Wales. And what you have to do with this, it's a little bit more involved, is you have to register as a trapper, and that involves letting me know that you want to be registered, and then I have to tell them that you are a kind of verified trapper, and they can add you to the system. You add the location of your camera, say your garden, and then you can upload your video and camera images from your camera trap, and people on there called spotters will go through those and identify them. There's loads and loads of people, and they're all quite competitive, some of them, and they come up with league tables. And on the bottom right there, you can see some of the records that we have got from using Mammal Web, but it wasn't as popular, and it's not so easy to use. So I don't know, we might persevere with it. I'm not sure. We'll see if there's interest in there. And I was thinking maybe I should rename it or create a new one for Mid Wales Mammals, just because this one is a little bit out of date now. So that's Mammal Web, and we might start using it a little bit more. I don't know. We'll find out from the mammal recorders out there whether it's a good thing to do. So that was just a little summary of recording. Hope it was useful. I can see there's some chat questions, and I did get asked quite a few when I was promoting this, and so here's a few kind of questions that maybe we can go through and see if we can answer. Some of them we've probably already covered. Someone was asking about the urban use of camera traps. A lot of the ones that Phil was showing are kind of woodland, but a lot of people are just putting them in their garden or on an urban park or something like that. So you're obviously going to get a little bit different type of species diversity in those urban areas. And yeah, we talked a little bit about attracting animals using bait, which is always something you can try and do, and lighting as well. But I'm not sure whether it's a good idea to light up the area where your camera is, and I guess that's more to do with the light that the quality of the camera is giving out. Yeah, we talked about having your camera stolen, and the best defense I think about that is trying to keep it hidden away from people. You can buy straps and cables that you can lock, but of course it's an extra expense, so you've got to have something to lock it to. Yeah, how do you keep the excitement going? Because if you're out there and you're not getting anything, then it will end up in the bottom of a drawer. So some tips on that, or yeah, that's probably a personal thing, isn't it? You've just got to keep getting out there and hoping. Lots of cats appearing on these. We don't really want records of those, but they do appear quite a lot. I kind of covered how to see the images and video that you have captured on your camera. You've got to get it onto your computer, really. Some cameras do allow you to look at it, but you don't get a very good view on that tiny screen. So I guess if someone has issues with that and how to play them, then I could help with them on a one-to-one, maybe is better. I've covered how to make wildlife records, mammal records from those captures. A few tips there on using the online sites and attaching your photo and taking snips or screenshots. And I guess the question for people here is that follow-up, and I guess having contact with the counter recorders and myself, I'm happy to field your inquiries and pass them on and help with identification and things. And those Facebook, Twitter groups as well are also useful for kind of getting follow-up information. And yeah, did we want to have another event in September? We're actually doing an All Wales BioBlitz on the 10th of September. And I was thinking maybe that might be a good time to try and promote more records of mammals. So a few sort of things to think about for the future there, and a few discussion points. And there's the help list. Did anyone want to have anything to say about some of the points on here? If you want to unmute yourself and make a comment, you're very welcome.
I was just going to offer about the SD cards again. I mentioned about good quality SD cards. I was given a batch of cards that somebody wasn't using anymore. They weren't particularly good quality, and that can be really disappointing if you load one of these SD cards into your trail camera and if the card fails. So that was one of the reasons why I was mentioning repeatedly about good quality peripherals, sort of thing, that the trail cameras and the batteries. Because yeah, like the disappointment of no captures, well, the disappointment of no recordings whatsoever is almost worse. Although at least you don't have to go through many hundreds of images looking for nothing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Mammal Web was set up, to enable people just to upload all their video and camera images, and then other people can do all the identifying and hard work. I mean, it's one way to get records, but I suppose part of the excitement is looking through your captures and seeing what you've got. There's some contact details, and I did have a little bit about what happens to your records, which might be of interest. So if once you've put your record up onto iRecord, you've submitted it using the various apps or websites, that gets seen by our mammal recorders. All three of them have access to it and can see your photo and make a judgment whether to verify it or not. And then we actually have to grab those records from the iRecord website, and then we process them, and then we upload them to Aderin, which is the wildlife recording database that holds all the records for Powys and the Brecon beacons, and also the other areas of Wales as well. So it's not instant once you submit your record. There is a process that it goes through. So yeah, there we go. I'll stop my share now.
Hi Ben, just to answer one of your questions about keeping the excitement with camera trapping. I would just encourage everybody just to keep going, because you never know. Like I most weeks just sit there plowing through videos of virtually nothing because a bird's flown through or there's a cat or something like that. But once in a blue moon you get something really exciting, like the Otter family that appeared in my garden, and just that one thing just keeps you going for a few more months and a few more months. You know, it's just, you never know what's going to crop up on your camera. So, you know, just keep going with it, keep putting it out there, and try and find the time to go through the footage and play around with the settings. If you're finding that you're getting too much of something, move it around, try different settings, make the videos shorter so it doesn't take you so long to look through them. But yeah, just keep going.
I think perseverance definitely is needed, because yeah, I think luck as well plays a part. So but putting your camera in a place where you can see tracks and signs of something that you're not quite sure what it is also a good thing to do, because you're kind of increasing your chances of getting something, because there's already a sign of something being present in that area. And yeah, if you want to confirm that. But yeah, I've got a friend who's desperate to capture otters on his local river, and he keeps putting his camera out, but as yet he hasn't got anything. And yeah, you've just got to have that desire, I guess, to persevere. And he too had some local ewes kind of fiddling with his camera and looking into it and things. They didn't pinch it, so maybe they're not quite sure what it is and a bit spooked by it, a bit like those roe deer as well that Phil showed.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's been, you know, it's like practice makes perfect. You get better at it. You learn to, oh, that works, that didn't. And yeah, you learn, you almost get an instinct for seeing those little tracks that previously you just wouldn't have noticed. And that helps a lot. But yeah, it is persistence. In the early days, you do get disappointments, but yeah, stick with it. You get the rewards, and then you get better at it, and you get more reward. I can't, you know, I set out cameras this week. In 4 weeks' time, I'll go back there, and I'm already, you know, full of anticipation of what I'm going to get. I'll get something, even if it is a polecat going past or a deer. There's nearly always something there. And sometimes you have to look at the video a couple of times too, because it's right at the back of the image, hiding behind the tree.
I guess if you're putting your cameras out away from home, then it's easier, I suppose, to leave them for a longer time. Whereas if they're in your garden, you're more tempted to check every morning. And I'm just wondering whether that affects what might get captured. Although I suppose urban garden wildlife is a little bit more tolerant of human scent and contact and things. So yeah, it's interesting. I bet there's not many people that put a camera in their garden and leave it for 4 weeks before they have a look at it. I suppose that interest is there if you want to look at it every day and see what you've caught the night before. So yeah, interesting, different kind of uses of camera. Okay, I think that was, yeah, do record molehills and signs of moles. And Tammy's put her email address on there, and I can let you all know that, and Phil's and Sorcia's as well.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure Tammy would agree. Don't be afraid to contact us. We don't bite. We want to help. It's really interesting to see what you're getting. You know, you may think, oh, they're going to be bored with this. No, they're not. It's all fascinating for us, and you know, it is. It's a Sherlock Holmes story for us. We get to be the detectives and help you out with what you've detected.
Yeah, I'd echo that as well. Yeah, I mean, if people don't want to be pestered, they won't get back to you. So I think, yeah, do make use of the knowledge out there and experience from people such as Phil and Tammy. And if you see any dragonflies, Bobby will be interested, especially if they're in Radnorshire. We do have a local recorder for Breconshire, and I'm not sure for Montgomeryshire, so dragonfly recorder up there. Anyway, we're going off mammals, so yeah, I hope that was useful. Okay,
Thank you very much.
I think we'll wrap it up. Yeah, thanks Tammy, thanks Phil for your contributions, especially Phil with his talk. That was great to see that footage, and yeah, thanks for everyone to join us. Nice small audience, and yeah, I'll let you know the link when it's up on YouTube. You can watch again if you like, and yeah, do get in touch if you want any more help and advice, and I can pass you on to Phil, Tammy or Sorcia as well with your mammal inquiries. That's great. Thanks very much, guys.